Good morning, everyone. Your chatter makes me happy because it means you're, right, interacting, getting caught up maybe a little bit with everyone. That's always a good thing. I hear Gary talk a lot about the importance of these moments, right, when we get the chance to come together and to worship and spend time together. And nothing better than we can do collectively than come together before the Lord. And so great to see everybody this morning. Appreciate you being here, and we're looking forward to jumping back in. We're going to be in Numbers chapter 21, roughly about verse 17 or so. I'll set the stage for that in our conversation here this morning in just a moment. But if you would, let's bow our heads together. Let's share in a word of prayer, and then we'll get into our Bible study this morning. Our Father in heaven, thank you for this beautiful day that you've provided. All praise and honor and glory before your name today. Thank you for just this opportunity to come together, to be with those of like precious faith, to bring our minds and our hearts together in a study of your word and to appreciate your testimony this morning. Thankful for all the promises that are founded in your word. Thankful for the faith that we can build in those promises, and ultimately to know that you will reward the faithful and that eternity is real, and it's a great hope that leads us and carries us every day. Strengthen us in our study today. Bless us as we strive to honor you, and we pray all these things through thy Son's name. Amen. All right, so let's jump back in here into Numbers chapter 21, and let me change the screen to get into the text. I'll show you a little bit of the maps as well here in just a little while. But basically, we've been traveling, right? We've been traveling a little bit. We had some issues with the Edomites. We talked a little bit about that Wednesday, right? It's kind of challenging because in one moment it looks like they're refusing, and it almost looks like they're refusing to let the people just kind of come straight across and straight up to where they want to be. So they have to kind of traverse it, right? They have to go around Mount Seir that had been given to Esau, and they come down around, finally start making their way back to the north. God says, enough of that. We studied that out of Deuteronomy chapter 2, actually, to kind of get the parallel passage that deals with this piece of history. They begin to travel to the north. They've had some successes, but they begin to complain. What did God send among them because of those complaints? Just a few verses earlier. Those fiery serpents, right? They sent those fiery serpents. Moses beseeches the Lord for an answer to that. And we talked Wednesday again about the fact that my answer and Moses' answer maybe to that would have probably been what? Yeah, we would have said, get rid of these snakes, right? Get rid of these fiery serpents. But that's not what God did. What he gave them was a remedy. That would become a parallel to whom? Jesus, right? Jesus himself said, as Moses lifted up the serpent, so must the Son of Man be lifted. And it becomes a parallel between that moment in history there where Moses makes that brazen serpent for a remedy to life that had been eluding folks. So they've made their journey now. Verse 11 tells us of chapter 21. They've made their journey up to Oboth and pitched at Ejabiram in the wilderness, which is before Moab, toward the sun rising. From thence they removed and pitched in the valley of Zerad. From thence they removed and pitched on the other side of Arnon, which is in the wilderness that cometh out of the coast of the Amorites, for Arnon is the border of Moab, between Moab and the Amorites. And quickly, I'm going to show you on the screen, and I'm going to walk up here. Every other tool I try to use doesn't seem to be very functional. Sorry for the folks at home. You'll hear my voice, but won't see me for a minute. But anyway, so I didn't give you the full sense, but remember Kadesh Barnea, right? Spent a lot of time there in Kadesh Barnea. Tried to come across Edom. They said, these folks in Edom said no. They travel to the south and come back upwards. And again, these are approximate. There's not any, they don't have a map that says this is exactly where these places were. Some archaeological finds help them determine those things, but there's projections as to where they believe these places were. But generally speaking here, up here's the Arnon River, okay? So we've gone through the central eastern part of Edom. You've traveled up through, you've come through Moab, you've crossed the Arnon River, and now you're up in amongst the Amorites. That's the travel, basically, that they went through in order to get to this moment in history that we're dealing with here in Numbers chapter 21. And so we reference that book of the wars, right? And Moses, we don't necessarily know exactly all of those details about all those chronicles that had been written. But Moses was definitely told to record the challenges, battles, various things that they had to experience. And so they begin to continue to travel. And what are they needing in verse 16, which is a common thread throughout their history? Water. Okay? Throughout this travel, water's been a major, major issue. It's been a good and a bad thing, right? There are times where they appreciated what God has done, honored His name for it. Other times they complained and didn't like how He was dealing with things, created more challenges. So they need water again, but this time, what do they do according to verse 17? Yeah, they sing this song, right? And then Israel sang this song, "Spring up, O well, sing you unto it." They have struck rocks. They've spoken to rock. They've said, "You rebels, must I draw you?" They've gotten water various ways. They're going to dig this well. And they're going to try to beseech the Father of heaven in order to help them and guide them through that process as they begin to have these victories against various opponents, if you will, in this process. But here's what I found interesting, verse 18. Who's going to be involved in digging this well? Everybody, right? Everybody's grabbing a shovel. The princes digged the well. The nobles of the people digged it. By the direction of the lawgiver with their staves, and from the wilderness they went to Metanah, and from Metanah to Nahal, and all them other places that none of us really know how to pronounce. Right? Everybody begins to get a stave and start digging the well necessary. Who've been giving them water up to this point? God. How are they going to get it this time? God plus their work, right? How much work did they have to do when they got fed? When the manna just was laying outside your tent every morning, right? None. You just had to go out and collect it on the appropriate days, right? How hard would it have been that day when they had to go out to get quail when it was 3 feet deep? It was 3 feet deep all the way around them. Right? Not a lot of effort. You're seeing a transition. Here's the point I'm trying to make to you. You're seeing a transition. God, up to this point, pretty much has just been taking care of it. Right? But He's got to get them ready, because when they go across Jordan and they take Jericho, God's going to be there, but they're going to have a role in that. They're going to have a role when they begin to conquest the land, first to the north and then back to the south. They're going to have responsibilities. In fact, if you recall, some of that work is involved, but also Moses warned the people in the book of Deuteronomy, I believe about chapter 9, that he talked to them about, listen, you're going to get houses you didn't build, you're going to get wells you didn't dig, a lot of things are going to happen that you didn't really have to do anything for, so don't complain when there's something you have to do. So I like their spirit here. They sing this song about asking for the blessings of God, and everybody gets their hands involved in aiding the people in finding water that was necessary. And because of that, they begin to have what in relationship to some battles and struggles they're having? Okay, so we're going to start seeing some success. That first happens with whom here in verse 21? King Sihon, right? Your question sheets ask simply this: what did Israel request of King Sihon? What did they want? Just let us go. Same thing they've been asking the Edomites, same things they asked the Moabites, same thing they've asked everybody. Can we just go through? We're not stopping. We're not here to take anything from you. Can we just pass through the land? What did Israel do then in response to King Sihon's aggression, because he didn't like that idea? Okay, so he came and fought against them, verse 23. And verse 24, Israel smote him with the edge of the sword and possessed his land from Arnon unto Jabbok. Why is that river area significant?
That's where Jacob
There you
wrestled
go.
with God.
Yeah, that's where Jacob wrestled with God. That's where he became Israel. That's the place where Jacob is told, you will no longer be known as Jacob, you will henceforth be known as Israel. That happened in the mud of the Jabbok River when he had sent his family, if you remember, away because Esau's pursuing. And remember, that's this region we're talking about. All these people were kind of intertied, whether they're tied to Esau, whether they're tied to Lot, whether they're tied to various individuals throughout the history of the people. So he gets aggressive, and he pays the price for it, when all they asked was just safe passage through this. So so notice verse 25. Israel took all these cities, and Israel dwelled in all the cities of the Amorites, in Heshbon, and in all the villages thereof. For Heshbon was the city of Sihon, the king of the Amorites, who had fought against the former king of Moab, and taken all his land out of his hand, even unto Arnon. He took it, now the Israelites have possessed it. And it's amazing sometimes how when you interfere with what God's trying to do is when the troubles come, right? You might ask yourself, well, why would God allow for this? And why is this, here they are, taking somebody else's property and land and homes. And the understanding is that's not what they intended. It's not what they wanted. All they wanted was, let us go through, but the people under their leadership refused, and they paid the consequence for it. Yeah, go ahead, Rodney.
Don't you think that with so many people, there was roughly 800,000 to 1 million people coming through the land, even just a peaceful passage would do damage to the land.
Yeah, you get the concern, right? And we talked about that even earlier in the text when Edom's not so sure they want this big bunch of folks walking through their garden, it's hard to kind of make all the connections, right? You could understand their trepidation, but if they know anything about the history of these people, you might think, let's just let them go, and so and they do know the history, by the way, because again, we forget sometimes these folks are interconnected to the history of God's people because of the various connectivities, whether it be Lot, whether it be Esau, whether it be somebody else that has connection. But you certainly understand when this isn't a couple of guys needing safe passage. This is a nation of people that are looking to walk through their land. And so great challenges come as it was. Just look at some of the language. Verse 29, woe to thee, Moab, thou art undone. O people of Chemosh, he hath given his sons that escaped and his daughters into captivity unto Sihon, king of the Amorites. We have shot at them at Heshbon, as perished even unto Dibon, and we have laid them waste even unto Nepha, which reacheth unto Medeba. There's just destruction in the path when the resistance comes to what God is attempting to do. So, move forward then you run into King Og, right? Thus Israel dwelled in the land of the Amorites. Moses sent out to spy Jazer, and they took the villages thereof, drove out the Amorites that were there, and they turned and went up by the way of Bashan, and Og, the king of Bashan, went out against them, he and all his people, to battle at Edrei. I don't know what this guy's thinking, right? Because he surely has known what just happened to Sihon, right? You would assume that word is spreading about the abilities and power of this nation of people that are just looking for safe passage. But he decides to resist as well. And the Lord told Moses, don't be afraid of him. And I love the language, for I have delivered him into thy hand. It's the same kind of language that he told them before they went out to spy the land, right? Go spy out the land which I have given you. It's yours. And the same kind of language here and the victory that happens in verse 35 of chapter 21. So Sihon and Og. Now, that's an interesting piece of history, right? Because, and we mentioned this Wednesday, the word of these two victories spread, right? Because who knows about this when they actually go to conquest the land starting in Jericho? Rahab did. When Rahab talks to those spies, she says, we have heard what you guys did to Sihon and Og. We know what happened to them, and we are fearful because we've heard the testimony of what happened to those other places that challenged and resisted you and your God. And so this piece of history, I don't think, is coincidentally recorded for us, because then when we see it mentioned in the time of Rahab, we even have record of what she's referring to here in the context of Numbers chapter 21. Any questions, thoughts? I know that's rapid fire, but I just wanted to make sure we hit that piece of history this morning. Okay, jump to chapter 22. And I'm sure we all kind of recount some of that history. So who are we dealing with here in chapter 22? Two guys, really. Balak and Balaam. Okay, we got Balak and Balaam, and a lot of things happening as it relates to them. So let me throw the map back up just for a moment. So they've made their traverse, right? And they've dealt with the various entities and challenges that they have had. And they have now made their way up to the north, up to the top of where that blue arrow is, up to the Jordan River. Jericho is on the west side of the river. They are on the east side, but that's basically, they're there. They're just on the doorstep of when they're about to go and conquest the land. They've made their travels to the, for lack of a better statement, to the point of entry that they're going to use in order to get over into Jericho. But they're still dealing with some challenges. As they get up to that area, Balak the son of Zippor saw all that Israel had done to the Amorites. And Moab was sore afraid of the people because they were many, and Moab was distressed because of the children of Israel. So Moab said unto the elders of Midian, so Moab, Edom, Midianites, right? They're all part of this large area that these Israelites have been intermixing and around, and says, now shall this company lick up all that are around about us, as the ox licketh up the grass of the field. And Balak the son of Zippor was the king of the Moabites at that time. So same issue Rodney was talking about a minute ago, right? These people are vast. And if they start traipsing through our land, they're going to devour the resources. Are we really able to sustain that if they do that? So he sends messengers to Balaam, the son of Beor, to Pethor, which is by the river of the land of the children of his people, to call him, saying, behold, there is a people come out from Egypt. Behold, they cover the face of the earth, and they abide over against me. Come now, therefore, and do what? Curse them. Okay, so he knows, because of the history of Sihon and Og, that we can't beat them face to face, right? We're not going to win against them if we just go into battle. We need what? We need help, and that help has got to come from some God somewhere, right? And so they go to this seer, if you will, and they say to him, listen, we need you to go curse these people that came up out of Egypt and are traipsing through the land, because it's going to be a nightmare for us if we don't deal with them. And so we need you to curse them so that we can smite them. If some God somewhere doesn't put something over top of these people to take this hedge of protection away, we're not going to be able to deal with them. And he's hoping that Balaam will do this so that he can drive them out. For why what that he whom thou blessest is blessed, and he whom thou cursest is cursed. So Balak uses a pretty interesting tactic, right? He basically says, Balaam, I need you to do this because I hear what? That every time you... Yeah, you seem to have a history of being able to bless whom you will bless and curse whom you will curse. Now let me stop for half a second with you and note a couple of other texts that I think are important in this conversation about Balaam. Go back to Genesis chapter 25. Genesis chapter 25. And let's look at verse, we can just start right at the beginning, but I'm going to read through verse 4. Then again Abraham took a wife, and her name was Keturah, and she bare him Zimram, and Joshkan, and Midan, and Midian, and Eshbak, and Shuah, and Jokshan begat Sheba, and Dedan, and the sons of Dedan were Ashurim, and anyway, you keep reading them. And the sons of Midian, Ephah, and Epher, and Hanok, and Abidah, and Eldah. All these were the children of Keturah. That's where Balaam came from. Okay? We again, interconnections. We sometimes think these guys are just disconnected from everything. No, they're not. They're not disconnected. How did he become this guy that people came to ask about spiritual things and whether a blessing would come or a cursing would come? Well, it's because he becomes part of this descendant line of Abraham's children, because Abraham had more than just, who do we think of? Abraham, Isaac, right? Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. Israel are the descendants of Jacob based on the promised child Isaac through Abraham, but there are other children connected to Abraham by more wives that he took, and even the very first time that happened was Hagar and Ishmael, right? And those descendants that come from them. So there's lots of interconnectivities among these people that we forget about sometimes. And I just want to draw your attention to that, because you might wonder, well, who is this guy? Where did he come from, and why would any of that have transpired that way? Let's go back. So I don't want to go back. Sorry. I do want to go back. But here's one other thing I want to note for you. Go to Revelation chapter 2. Here's how significant this situation with Balaam is. It becomes so intricate to their history that they share for generations after generations, that by the time Jesus gives this direct revelation to John in Revelation chapter 2, notice he says, I have a few things against thee, because thou hast there them that hold the doctrine of Balaam, who taught Balak to cast a stumbling block before the children of Israel, to eat things sacrificed unto idols, to commit fornication. Thou hast also them that hold the doctrine of the Nicolaitans, which I hate. 2 Peter chapter 2 verse 15 does the same thing. It's interesting that the history of this situation and Balaam himself is passed along so much that when Jesus gives this direct revelation to those, to John, to the church here at Pergamum, that he references this piece of history, this historical figure, in that context. Anyway, I thought that was interesting that even by New Testament times, they were still using this situation as a reference. Okay, now I'll go back. Just wanted to give you some of that context. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
We're in 2
Peter 2:15 is what my notes say. I can look it up real quick and make sure I'm not wrong. Am I right? Okay. 2 Peter 2:15 was the other text. Shh. All right. Jump to verse 6. So the question was, under failure with the Moabites, it's question 3. It says, what did Balak request of Balaam? And we kind of answered that, right? Bless. I don't want you to bless them. I want you to what? Curse them. Look at verse 6. Come now, therefore, I pray thee, curse me this people, for they are too mighty for me. True. Peradventure I shall prevail, that we may smite them, and that I may drive them out of the land. For I wot that he whom thou blessest is blessed, and he whom thou cursest is cursed. I heard about you. I can't deal with them on my own. But if you curse them, I can take them. And that's the basic request that he makes of Balaam. So what's Balaam tell the messengers to go tell Balak? Yeah.
My question there is, so Balaam did have a relationship with God? I mean, he is the person who was blessing and cursing. Like, God has other things going on out here besides just what's going on here.
I don't have any direct evidence of that, but circumstantial evidence seems to point that way, right? That he's part of this heritage, and that God is you. Because who does he say I got to go talk to? I got to go talk to the Lord. And so, you know, you know what I mean? I'm just using the circumstances to kind of develop my conclusions, because I don't have anything that helps me directly do that, but it sure appears to be, because that's who he says I got to go talk to. And who talks to him? The Lord does. So I think that circumstantial evidence is sufficient for me to say that that's who he's connected to. And whatever he's been doing that we don't have record of, most likely has come from God's purposes that he's been using Balaam for, potentially. Again, but that's the piece that we don't know, because we don't have any of that. But we do know his failures and his troubles and the lessons that we learn from him in this scene. Jump down to verse 12. So here's the conversation. Balaam tells messengers, go tell Balak, I can't bless or curse anybody. I got to do what the Lord, whatever the Lord guides me to do, that's what I got to do. And so God says to Balaam, verse 12, thou shalt not go with them, thou shalt not curse the people, for they are blessed. And Balaam rose up in the morning and said unto the princes of Balak, get you into your land, for the Lord refuses to give me leave to go with you. And the princes of Moab rose up, and they went unto Balak and said, Balaam refuses to come with us. And so those princes, those messengers, they spend the night with Balaam. And Balaam says, I'm going to talk to the Lord about this. And God basically tells him, listen, I blessed those people. We're not changing that based on some request for Balak. So you're not going anywhere with these guys, and you're not cursing the people, because they're already blessed. They've already been chosen, and we're not circumventing that. And so Balak does the right thing initially, right? Goes to these guys and says, y'all, I'm going home, because I'm not coming. And we're not doing this. It's not part of what God desires in this scene. So then question 3, what did God tell Balaam to do then? Okay. But in that latter section, verses 15 to 21, so Balak sins, and I should have given you a little preface. So Balak sends back, right? He gets message from those guys that said Balaam won't do this. So Balak sent yet again princes, more and more honorable than they. He sent the B team the first trip. He puts together the A team and sends those guys and says, you got to convince Balaam to do this. So they come to Balaam and said to him, thus saith Balak the son of Zippor, let nothing, I pray thee, hinder thee from coming unto me. This is important. Verse 17. For I will promote thee unto very great honor, and I will do whatsoever thou sayest unto me. Come therefore, I pray thee, curse me this people. I'm going to put you at the top of the list among the people. And you're going to be able to ask whatever you want and it's going to get bestowed upon you. That's how serious Balak is about getting Balaam on his side. Now that's significant, by the way, and I'll just tell you if you haven't caught it, but if you read further, every time Balaam brings his prophecies right back, and there's a series of them, every time he does, what's Balak take him to? Yeah, some other place, right? Oh, wait a minute. Before you decide, I made you a great promise. Numbers 22, verse 17. I made you a great promise. Let me show you some of that. So he shows him a little over here. And he says, nope. And they said, well, wait a minute. Don't decide yet. And he's going to take him over here. He shows him more. And he said, no, don't make a decision yet. And we're going to go, right? He's every step of the way. You'll see it when you move through the text. You'll see him every step of the way showing Balaam more and more of what he can have if he'll just turn and curse these people for Balak. Keep that in the back of your mind when you're working through the narrative. So Balaam answers in response to this second attempt. And basically, what's God basically tell Balak? It's a little tricky, right? Because you wonder, is he giving him permission or is he not? And so notice, he asks those guys to stay the night again. I'll inquire of the Lord again. Verse 20. And God came unto Balaam at night and said unto him, if the men come to call thee, rise up and go with them, but yet the word which I shall say unto thee, that shalt thou do. So, and I've looked at this a couple different ways. In one way, I don't, when God says, rise up and go with them, I don't necessarily think that's what God is saying. What's he doing? He's telling Balaam what? He's telling Balaam what those guys are going to say. Notice it. He says unto them, if the men come to call thee, rise up and go with them, you're going to do what? You're going to do the command that I've already given you. That's God's instruction. They may come and tell you, rise up and go with me, with them, but you're going to do what I've instructed you to do. You're going to follow commands. That's one way I see this. This might be God saying to Balaam, listen, you got to make a what? You got to make a choice. Isn't that what everybody's got to do in life? Good and evil is going to be set before you. You're going to be offered an opportunity to rise up and go with these guys. And they've made you some tremendous promises. They are offering you all kinds of stuff. You're going to have to make a choice whether you're going to listen to my commands or go do what these guys want you to do. Balaam, you're going to have to make a choice. And that's what I see happening here with him. And then there's an extra caveat, I think, in verse 21. Because God says, back up a little bit. Sorry, pixelated for a second. I can't read any of those names, but I can say the word pixelated. That's sign of the times. Anyway, but here he says, if the men what? If they come to call thee, rise up and go with them, but you need to do what I've told you to do. But what's Balaam do? He didn't even wait on them. He didn't even wait on them. They haven't even come to call yet. Balaam rose up in the morning, saddled his donkey, and went. The implication, now maybe it's just not there in the narrative. I suppose you can make that argument, that it's understood that they've met together. But that doesn't, to me, there seems to be an indication here that Balaam's choice is about whom? Balaam's choice is about Balaam, right? I think how we understand the details might be tricky, but I think that's clearly understood. Balaam's decision is about him, and he's going to have to learn through his donkey and an angel that this should never have been about him. And that's really, in some senses, the sin of Balaam. And when you see those references in Revelation chapter 2, what was that about? You follow after the doctrine of Balaam. You worship idols. And you go after these things that are about you. You pursue those personal things that are always about you. And Balaam's challenge here is you have to make a choice, and you chose yourself, Balaam. You chose yourself over what God wanted from you in this scene. And that's what we're going to see unfold through the rest of this narrative as it relates to Balaam. Thoughts or questions as the kids are about to come upstairs? I was in a real dream world today thinking I could get all the way through chapter 22. That didn't work out at all, but anyway.
The princess had to be there because he got up and went with them. That they made.
Yeah, I'm not arguing they weren't there. I'm just arguing that he didn't wait for them to. In the language, it doesn't seem like he waited for them to come and ask. He'd already made his choice. But again, either way, he made a choice. What the details of that might elude us a little bit. But he chose against what God really wanted from him.